We've gotten tons of requests to make a version of our airsoft sound grenade, the ThunderStirke V2, that uses a different type of ammo. Normally, it uses 8-shot ring caps, which are by far the safest way of producing a loud bang on the airsoft field for cheap. But one of the most popular kinds of sound devices are blank firing grenades. Some use full blank rounds like 9mm and 22LR, but the slightly safer ones use 209 primers. And we've been getting tons of requests to make a 209 primer conversion for the ThunderStirke V2, so we finally made one. For those that don't exactly know what primers are, they're used in firearms to ignite the powder inside the cartridge or the barrel. 209 primers, called shotgun or muzzleloading primers, are exactly that, just used specifically in shotgun shells and muzzleloading rifles. They contain a small amount of an impact-sensitive explosive that detonates when you strike the metal top and produce a very loud bang. They're also very small and cheap, although they can get quite expensive if you have to buy them online because you have to pay for specialized shipping, since they are explosive. Along with that, they're a bit riskier to transport, but are usually fairly stable. Our new conversion is simply a modified detonator base with a holder for the primer. It can convert any of our fuse mechanisms like the pull twist, standard, or spoonless, and is also compatible with almost any outer body variant. This system is also quite unique because the firing pin is actually stationary. This means that instead of having the primer held in a non-moving part and striking it with the firing pin, the primer itself gets pushed into the striker, causing it to detonate. And the firing pin isn't an extra part, it's actually just the main bolt that's already needed for the mechanism. So the primer holder that sticks out of the bottom gets pushed into the bolt, igniting the primer. It sort of acts like a button that uses the kinetic energy of being pushed to detonate the primer. That also means that it's adjustable. If the primer isn't consistently detonating, you can lower the firing pin so that it gets pushed deeper into the primer. Using the conversion is quite simple as well. All you need to do is unscrew the primer housing from the detonator base to leave the mechanism by itself, then reset the mechanism like normal by pushing up and rotating counterclockwise until it stops rotating, and engage the safety of whichever fuse type you're using. In this case, we're using the spoonless. After you've reset the mechanism, separate the conversion housing from the primer holder. The housing is the outer part and the primer holder is the inner part that sticks out of the bottom. Place a 209 primer into the top slot of the primer holder, then drop it into the housing. You might need to wiggle it a little bit to make sure that it sticks all the way out. After that, simply screw it onto the detonator base. And that's it for the fuse. You can now screw the loaded fuse onto whichever outer body variant that you're using. And now it's fully loaded and ready to go. Now let's get to the assembly of the actual conversion. First, remove the original detonator base from whichever fuse mechanism you're converting by unscrewing it from the bottom. Then screw on the new detonator base until the bolt becomes flush with the very bottom. We also recommend adding a little bit of adhesive to the bolt before screwing on the detonator base to prevent it from spinning loose when loading. And make sure not to use Loctite or thread locker because it can corrode plastic. You can also use a flat object to make sure it's level or just eyeball it. Just make sure that the bolt doesn't stick too far out or in. It should be somewhere around here, and you can obviously adjust it by screwing it more in or less. Once the adhesive has dried, that's it for the assembly. So if you want to use 209 primers in an airsoft sound grenade, then consider checking out this conversion. Although primers aren't a ton louder than some good quality ring caps.
Let's test this. I'm curious about the sound, so.
We still personally use caps on a regular basis, but primers do have a good use in some cases. A quick disclaimer though, we would caution most people when using this conversion if you're taking it to an airsoft field that has strict BFG rules. Make sure to check with your field owner or admin because many fields don't allow blank firing devices, especially 3D printed ones. Primers are also a tad bit more flammable, so keep that in mind when using it in drier areas, even though it has a much lower likelihood of starting a fire than pyro grenades. That's why we still generally recommend using some high quality ring caps, and the sound is pretty comparable.